Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Good Girl Rebellion podcast. I'm Anna and I am so excited to be joined by my friend Ange, who I will talk about a little bit in a second. So in this week's episode, what I wanted to talk about was around our rebel framework, and I actually feel like this conversation will fit into a lot of our areas of rebel. So one of them is our resilient mindset side. One is everyday action and actually doing the work, which I think can sometimes be a difficult thing. And another one is the L, our liberating results. So let me introduce Ange. For 34 years, Ange Cameron has been helping people navigate life's challenges with greater courage, self-awareness, and compassion. She's a psychotherapist, mindful compassion coach, sauna master, and retreat leader, and I have been on one of her retreats, just put that in there, who works with both individuals and organisations across Scotland. Ange leads wild retreats in Scotland and the Azores, Portugal, where coaching, mindfulness, nature, and meaningful connection come together. Her work is rooted in a simple belief: we have one life, and it's far too precious to spend disconnected from what matters most. Hear, hear. Away from work, she's happiest in the sea, on a coastal path, in a sauna, or exploring her fascination with nature, marine life, and the wonders of the world around us. Oh, yay! Thank you so much for joining me today, Ange. This is going to be a great conversation.
And it's a blessing to be here as well on this day, because it is actually World Ocean Day today. And I have a real affinity to marine conservation and the ocean. So fantastic. Let's go with the waves and ride them together, Anna.
Love it. Love it. So we know each other in real life, and we've met many times. And also, as I mentioned, I have been lucky enough to be a part of one of Ange's retreats. But we were talking about this podcast together at a networking thing, and we stuck on we chose the topic of striving. And I do think this is a big topic to talk about. I then sent you a list of like about 30 questions. And you said you sent me a voice note that said every single one of these could be a whole PhD thesis. And I was like,
that is
yes, true. It is true. I have lots of questions, but we will see where we go because we always have such amazing conversations together. But first of all, I think it's good to I think we in ourselves know what we mean by striving, but what do you think what do we mean by striving? What does it mean for you?
I think what's really important is when people are listening to this, Anna, is I often think, even although, that the Oxford Dictionary have their definition of striving, I think we all individually have definitions of different words. It doesn't matter whether it's support or striving or goals. So it's to understand when people are listening to it, is actually what is my definition of striving? Because some people have a different grasp on it than others, a different tightness. But to me, I think striving means really feeling like something isn't enough. So there's a kind of sometimes pressure valve there. It's a sense of always chasing the next thing. And it's always like the future thing rather than what is here and now. And I'm not saying let's only do here and now. But often the striving, especially in women, when we're talking about that rebellious part in the good girl, it's always usually within women is about that the next thing, fixing ourselves, improving whatever is something that is not good enough, rather than the striving of growth is healthy. And it often is, kind of there's that tinge within it, of some kind of self-criticism, self-judgment about it.
Definitely. And I think sometimes there's also another side to it, especially for women, in that the striving can sometimes be around an old story of what I should have done by now. Do you know what I mean? Where I should have been by now, or where other people expect me to be or to go. So I think there's the internal side of it of like, I really want to get there, and then you get to that milestone and you're like, all right, next, 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 and never really arrive. That's that
Hmm.
feel of it. But I also think sometimes we've internalized some of those things that are external to us, that we've outgrown or that are outdated, but they're kind of still hanging on a little bit. Does that
Hmm.
does that sound true?
Yes, definitely, because of course, as children and young people, young adults, we're definitely like sponges, and we hold on to that. If you can imagine a sponge, even if you were to drop it in a bath, it soaks quite quickly the water right into the ground, and it's quite heavy. And some of that needs even squeezed out even more than that doesn't belong to us. It might belong to our teachers, our parents, our neighbours, our aunts, our uncles, whoever, or even that inner critic that is saying something that's still not good enough. And you mentioned the word should, and I do love to say to people, stop masturbating, because that's what in psychology, when we call masturbating, it's often a word that people don't forget. So it's the musts and the shoulds and the can'ts. And those words itself, whether we say them externally or internally, always causes some restriction, some kind of control, less empowerment, less freedom. Um, and that striving in itself, so that constant always there, not here.
I think that's a really key one. And I'm interested in, how do we tell whether we're kind of striving in a healthy way versus from a place of like pressure or fear. And I think obviously the should and the must
Hmm.
is a part of that. But is there any other thing you can think of that we can look at and go, do I really want to work this hard, or to do this, or to do it this way? What's going on
Yeah,
underneath, do we think?
yeah, yeah. I mean, when that the pressure-based striving often feels quite exhausting. It's tiring, where the healthy striving feels energizing. So one expands us, the other depletes us. And a simple question that I um, ask myself is, am I moving to something that I want, that I really want, rather than just I have to do or I should do? The other thing is, I do suggest that maybe people and some of your listeners say, um, is so even when we want something, I don't always think it's good for us, and that's when our wisdom comes in more than our intellect or cognitive thinking. Because I think what a good question to ask yourself is, do I want this in a way that's going to sacrifice my happiness just now, or my well-being just now, or my level of angst? Or just because we want something, it doesn't mean that we have to actually follow it. And sometimes a question is, do I really, really want this, or do I just want this? And so then the two back questions on that for me is this something that's nurturing me, or is it something that's depleting me?
Yeah.
And even if it's something that we want, if it is depletion, that's not wisdom. We have to have the courage to move towards what is nurturing us.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And do you think that striving is something that gets rewarded in a kind of, especially a very Western culture?
It is just fascinating how rewarding people see it in society, and often globally, actually, that it is rewarded in their culture, absolutely. And we celebrate, well, the more productivity and achievement and the busyness. And people, it's, I think it's still around that exhaustion and busyness as a badge of honor. And we're praised more for doing more, which it rather than what's actually making us happier. And I think one of the challenging questions that I would suggest that we ask ourselves is, what's then our perception of when we do reset, when we do recharge, when we go on retreat, when we just sit there like I do in the morning, and I'm sitting with my cup of coffee and I'm just stroking my dog? Do we think I'm not doing anything? Actually, what I'm actually doing in that moment, it's like plugging my iPhone charger in, but not with the general charger. I'm plugging it in with my pad charger. Because every time we
Yeah.
sit down, we feel bad or guilty about resting or give ourselves permission to even meditate or do a yoga session or go out and have a walk or, hang
Sauna.
about in our PJs or sauna, then, if we think that is more, oh, well, it's one or the other, I'm resting. And often people feel bad or guilty about that. And actually, what's happening there is physiologically, there's so much science about it, neurologically and emotionally, there is so much recharge going on. And all that cortisol is going down, the serotonin, the dopamine is coming up. And that's the free hormone drugs that we want to
Mhm.
actually go and strive in a healthy way, that we go and achieve what we want to do, with wisdom again, rather than that inner, I'm not doing enough, I'm not doing enough, always chasing.
Yeah, definitely. That's such an important one. And I do feel like, particularly the Good Girl Rebellion is for those women who identify with the good girl personality, but also many of us are, building businesses and that kind of thing. And I think what can happen is we can end up like giving up a high pressure career
Uh-huh.
and end up, you know doing the same things for ourselves, the
Yeah.
same have putting the same expectations on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yeah, another episode maybe on rest would be a good one to put in,
Uh-huh.
um because I think what kind of happened was women were told in the kind of 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever, that we could have it all, but
Oh.
actually that meant do it all, didn't it? It meant
Mm-hmm.
do it all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So to have it all, we needed to do it all.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that underlying message, we don't hear it maybe quite so much, but I think it still basically means the same thing. The whole striving thing is about just keep going, just keep doing it all. It's fine. You
Absolutely.
can have it all.
Absolutely, Anna. And also, you just have to look at even here in Scotland, but also in Western society, you just need to look at how many women are sitting in boardrooms. It's like one to every like 25 men, or, and making decisions. And of course, there's such a fight just now going on, or certainly an acknowledgement, really, about the amount of funding and focus that is into women's healthcare, which frankly I think is absolutely shocking and disgusting at how long that we've put up with it. And then, there's even things of, on women's health, who's making the decisions? Actually, predominantly 97% of it is men. And I find that even around the menopause, around our hormones, around periods, and I just find that absolutely bizarre, really bizarre. And it's time that we showed up for ourselves to have the courage. And I love that word, because the word cur, from the word courage, comes from um, the Latin word to speak from one's heart, but with that real bravery, with that spine, um, with that sturdiness within us. And I think it's time for women to really, really do that and show up, not just for ourselves, but all our sisters and our daughters and our mothers and all the ones that came before us and fought, whether it be the suffragettes or whoever else. It's time, Anna.
Ugh,
Don't get me. I'll start writing
absolutely.
a whole podcast about that, and and a PhD in itself.
Absolutely, and it deserves it, because I think there's so many gaps in what's happening. It's like we get some gains in some areas, but then we almost seem to go backwards in other areas, and
Mhm.
and not everything seems to gain all at the same time. And I think we end up being almost like this kind of sandwich generation between our mothers and grandmothers and what they were fighting for, and we get a bit of that, but then it's not quite everything.
No.
So I hope, and we keep fighting for those things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the nature of women, you've got all that that generation and that sandwich that you're talking about. But also, generally, you know, underneath that surface of women striving, I do think in our nature, at nobody's fault whatsoever, even as little girls, we're looking for that approval, that belonging, that validation, that feeling safe. And it's that, discovery when you're working with somebody else, whether it's you or myself, to really come back home to yourself. You're not transforming into someone else. It's not like Wonder Woman's going to put on a new outfit or that. You're transforming into that real you of always who you are. And it's stripping back that other stuff to feel safe enough within yourself, secure enough, confident enough. And actually, it's not that although I do believe that on some level, we all, just in our human nature as human beings, need some recognition. And I think that's important, but I think it's just as important that we give that. Um, but then what we do is when we strip all that away, behind that striving, what you're really looking at is that beautiful rawness when we're courageous enough for women to feel safe within themselves, that they have that internal validation. And that's the much more permanent, real stuff, the richness, the beauty,
Yeah.
which is just bloody fantastic, frankly.
It is. And this is why I wanted to get you to come on and talk about this, because I think it's identifying and explaining what that means, and giving us permission, I think, to
Mm,
do it. Because I think you're right. We've had all of this like proving and striving, and it's all about how do I look externally. A lot
yeah,
of it, it's not all. A lot of it
yes.
is about how does it look externally. But
Mhm.
actually, and yes, that's part of it, but it's not everything. I think
No.
that's the key. That's the key.
One of the things, what and some of this, the achievement and the recognition or validation comes from the ego rather than the real healthy sense of self. And what
Yeah.
happens in that ego? I mean, it is trying to keep us safe in some ways, or a kind of false sense of what it thinks to feel safe. But actually, when we come back to that, what really matters to me, and I think when we come to our own internal validation, it's not that it becomes even more solid and secure, that it comes longer lasting, and it comes out not just in our professional lives, but in our personal lives and things like that. Just like I say to my girls, yes, I am a kick-ass mummy. I'm compassionate, supportive, empathic, but I will supportively challenge you. That's my job. I will look objectively at things. But also, I think there's something there about really acknowledging within ourselves. And if I'm being honest, Anna, one of the first ways that I overcame and thought, do you know what? My ego can't keep running my life here, because it's like me, it's sitting in the driver's car and I'm in the back seat. I thought, sod that for a laugh. So I started talking to myself in the mirror. Now, a lot of people don't see me as shy. I still have a shyness about me. I certainly know that little Angela and teenage Angela and young adult Angela was pretty shy. Um, or maybe sometimes what we do as women is curb what we're saying, what we want to really say, but we stop ourselves or amend it in order to fit in. And I started having these conversations with myself in the mirror because I had to really look at myself. And of course, I had to get over that. Oh, first of all, you get over that judgment of looking at yourself in the mirror, but you really see your true soul when you look into your own eyes. Even,
Mm.
and I had to get over through quite a few uncomfortable things. And I would really encourage people to do this and actually turning around and saying, hold on, there's this fire in the belly, a real love in the heart, and really embrace that and stop hiding it for other people. You don't have to be in other people's faces or stamp on other people. But actually, come on, Ange, it's time to really show up for yourself. And I had to keep having these conversations, no matter how uncomfortable they were. And I would encourage people to really try that, like your own number one fan, your own coach. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah,
it's very
definitely.
empowering.
Yeah. Mm. Oh, I love that one. And I think you've touched on this, but I mean, how do we distinguish healthy ambition from proving? And you talked a little bit about ego just then, and things coming from the ego, and perhaps that's more to do with the proving side. Is there
Hmm.
more that you can say about that? Do you think?
Yeah, I think healthy ambition for me means I want to do it because it matters to me.
Hmm.
And often it matters to me because it's in my heart or your values or your morals or something like that. I think proving, on the other hand, says to me, I need to do this to feel worthy. I need to do this so I can get validation, or my boss can say so and so, or my partner can say this, or people give me that recognition. So I think sometimes it's really interesting about both of them, because I think sometimes the actions can actually look not just similar, but actually identical from the outside. But the
Hmm.
motivation, the intentional motivation underneath, is completely different. So it's really, again, important to have these courageous, compassionate conversations with ourselves to go that extra bit, so we can really meet our own edge there. We don't have to cross our own edge, but when we meet our own edge, and I think most people will know what I mean by that, that we're not so uncomfortable, but we're supportively challenging ourselves, that we're curious. We have this real wondering that actually, what is my deep intention here? And when we do that self inquiry, it's not just an analytical or cognitive answer we get, it's more a wise response from the heart. And I think that's pretty awesome stuff comes out of that, really, really. And the more we do it, the more natural it becomes to us, Anna.
Yeah.
So coming back, what
Yeah.
is my
Absolutely.
intention with this?
Hmm. Yes, and I was just thinking about, like, in my book, I was talking about how
Mm,
sometimes the good girl personalities can be very motivated by external accountability. And I think that's not because we don't have internal accountability, but just because we've been taught to be agreeable and useful, and all of those things that good girl conditioning comes from. And I think maybe that's another reason why sometimes it can be hard to know within yourself until you do some of that in inner work, and you start like investigating it for yourself. It's like, dude, is this my ambition, or is this what I think I need to do to prove my worth? Do you see what I
absolutely.
mean? There's the difference.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think also the thing about your book as well, Anna, if somebody chooses to work with somebody like yourself or me, then you've got somebody directly there that can think about things and facilitate them, that self inquiry much more. But I think certainly part of a self development and richer life, I think, and living a richer life is even. Taking your book and to actually just read one page and just pause and actually go away and reflect. And when I mean reflect, I don't mean overthink it. And I certainly do not mean judge yourself for it, but just ponder. Go around, empty your dishwasher, do your housework, take the dog a walk, ponder what's there for you, what it's kind of lying and stirring up for you. Then turn the next page and see what happens at these times. So,
Hmm.
really giving that wise reflective space in between, which I think is really good about, in fact, I think it's fantastic and so powerful about having books and really having that richness of the right insight and questions that we need to ask ourselves.
Mm. Thank you for that. Yeah, that makes so much sense. I think there's so much of we're just consuming and consuming information, but we sometimes that step, it's easy to think, oh, I'll go back to that later. I'm just busy, busy,
Hmm.
busy. But
Mm.
actually, I think it's right. If we stop with that page and we spend the time, I love taking an idea on a walk with me, and I just
Yes,
talking to myself. Honestly, even out loud, I'm just
absolutely.
talking to myself on my
Yeah,
walk, going, and it's a good conversation. So,
yes. Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I love it. There's three things there, Anna. First of all, I'll sit certainly Monday to Thursday, 20 minutes, sit and have my coffee. But sometimes I'll write my journal, sometimes I'll meditate, sometimes I'll just sit, but and also get a book. So if the listeners are listening, when you buy Anna's book, buy yourself a nice bookmark, read one page, put it down, drink the rest of your coffee. That's your day's work. You do more when these questions are getting dropped into the unconscious and that self-inquiry.
Yeah.
And I think being outdoors, and that's why I love nature so much. Mother Nature holds us unconditionally with all that love and compassion. I mean, we breathe the same air as the birds, as the dogs, as the daisies, as the trees. And isn't that wondrous? And also that actually Mother Nature has this third ear to hold us and listen to us. And I think that is so, just the vastness in itself gives our mind, rather than sitting thinking about it inside, gives our mind that spaciousness in that vastness, that we're in this universe. And actually, we're not real, we're just a little person out of the 8 billion people. And when we're out in that um, space, that actually the mind will just go, it won't close up. So that idea, and it's funny how you said you talk to yourself on a walk. I'll mostly talk to Miss Luna Lovegood, my wee Jack Russell, but I do it when she's in the house. I'll talk to Luna and I'll talk to my empty chair in the car, because you can imagine yourself. So I have a 86-year-old Angela. She's a brilliant coach to me. She's extremely wise. And see what your older person, or just that empty chair, does. See what happens there. And
Mm.
don't answer the question so quickly. It's an everyday tool that's free.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay, I'm looking at my questions. So I'll ask this question, but I had something else that I've been working on recently about this. So the question was, what gets lost when women believe that we have to become harder, faster, or more relentless in order to succeed? And I think come back to that in a second, but I've been writing a thing at the moment around, have we just moved on from being the good wife to just being the good business person, and called it
Hmm.
liberation, when actually all we've done is just swap one thing for another in terms of striving. And I think that's an interesting thing to talk about, because I think in the 2010s, the whole girl boss thing kind of came out, and
Hmm.
originally it was about having that opportunity that we didn't have before to have our own business.
Hmm.
It just, you had to have so much money to start a business, and then suddenly it was much more available to people.
Hmm.
And so it was something that was possible. But then what happened was, it was all about, you know getting up at 5 a.m. and going and going and running and running and running and just doing, and running as in being busy. So I'll ask the question again, but what do you think gets lost when we believe that we've got to become harder, faster, and more relentless in order to succeed?
Hmm. Hmm. And I'll come back and answer that. I'd like to answer one of the things that you said. Have we just shifted something? Have we just shifted this from being a good wife or good partner or good, maybe mother or whatever that is, into a good business person?
Yeah.
Whether you're, in leadership management, or you're an entrepreneur, a founder. And I think that's right. And again, it's that intentionality behind it, that we need to have the courage to ask ourselves that. Am I just because it's an external thing, it doesn't mean that my intention is the same. So we have to first of all ask that.
Hmm.
What gets lost? There can be kind of two things. First of all, there's that self, that sense of self. So I have many women come to me and they don't feel lost. They've just, who am I? They've lost part of them, whether it's even setting up their own business or becoming a mother or a partner, and taking, I said to a colleague a couple of weeks ago, I says it's like we're just like the CEO in our own house. And
Yeah.
that's actually not okay. And then there's the other bit of, what have we actually lost? And often I think it's that, um, the joy, the creativity, even our health. I mean, the stats in the NHS in the UK is that women access health services much more, albeit that we live longer, but the reason that we access health services more is because we're busy caring for every man and his dog. And we're doing everything for everybody, you know. Um, our relationships get lost sometimes. You know, I see women often when I'm working with couples in couple therapy, Anna, the amount of times they come in and, I mean, you know, maybe a couple come in, they're sitting, that a woman's been doing this, she's been being the CEO in their house, she's been paying the bills, emptying the dishwasher, making sure the kids are clothed and dressed and fed. And oh, by the way, that we've not even come to the work bit, you
Yeah.
know, and all of that stuff, paying the bills and looking after the kid, that is not sexy, Anna. You know, it's not sexy stuff. It's not going to turn us on. And the more we do that, we get lost in the practicalities of that. So that relationship starts to diminish. It becomes secondary, but also a relationship with ourselves and that real, genuine presence, because we're always having to, oh, you know, my to-do list, and I'm always striving to this. And I think how, you know, we often talk about is burnout or mental fatigue, compassion fatigue, and it comes out that way. And I think what's really important is to notice these signs really early. I think first of all, to notice the signs, I think what a lot of women need to have a conversation with ourselves, and I don't mean once a year. I'm talking about almost once every even couple of days, about where is my boundaries today? Because my boundaries of saying yes and no and everything else and giving every man and his dog and my kids and goodness knows who else everything might be different like today. Even before I came on here, I just lay on my sofa. I just lay on my sofa for an hour and I just lay there. And I thought I was going to have a nap, but I didn't have a nap. But it's that bit where we're always giving out. And we just get exhausted. We lose ourselves within that and that presence. And I think rather than just noticing the signs of any of these fatigues, because I experienced mental fatigue twice in the pandemic, and I've still to have a conversation with who decided that kids should be homeschooled. I have, honestly, to this day, I'm still pissed about that, you know.
Yeah.
But we're always giving out as women, and I think that actually we end up losing ourselves. So one analogy I like, being a visual person, is it's like a set of traffic lights: the green,
Hmm.
the amber, the red. Do not wait until the amber is moving into the red. The minute you even get a sense in yourself, just a, you know, a sense check in yourself at any moment that you're moving into the red, you need to really look at your diary, be taking things out, stop putting things in. Look at your diary, and I often do this. I look at my diary and I say, right, I'm taking 3 things out my diary. I might postpone them.
Yeah.
Actually, that could wait till after the holidays. That doesn't need done
Hmm.
right now. Nobody's going to check my cupboards if they're all tidy. I'm not having to do so many social media posts or so many meetings. And is that networking meeting, is that meeting of real value to me right now? Can I delay it? Do you see what I'm saying? So really looking
Yeah.
not just wisely, but objectively, even at your own diary, in order to stop losing things, really. So, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, so true. So true. And I think there's so much of a feeling of whatever we're doing, whatever, however much we're putting in. It's, I think when we get stuck in the striving, it's always that it's not enough, it's not enough. And it doesn't matter how
Mhm.
much, it's still not enough. So I'm loving all of these tips and things that you're sharing about what we can do
Mhm.
about that. And I think I've definitely found this myself because I do work hard, and I've always got many irons in the fire, as you know. For me, I've always
Mm.
got lots of things going on, which I love. I love doing. But I think there's a difference between resilience and self-abandonment, and I think sometimes it can be difficult to see the difference between
Mhm.
those two things. Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
Yes. Yeah. I also think what you said there, you've got lots of things going on and stuff like that. And when people hear that, often they think, oh, they must be busy or stressed or, demanding of themselves. And I don't think so. I think that's a healthy striving when we have a variety that's creative, that's making us happy. And I do think we need creative things in our life. I know for you, Anna, it's jewellery and arts and being creative and expressing yourself and helping others, guide them and your expertise in there. For me, it is definitely being a sauna master and showing people how to meditate in the sea, and actually really come back to their body and feel embodied. So I think that we need to, really, it's not just all being busy. I mean, it was a couple of weeks ago, I was at the doctor's and I was talking about interrupted sleep, which was very uncommon for me. And the doctor says, but you're always busy. I says, well, I'm a single parent. I've got two kids. I've got my own business. Being busy is one thing, but then being busy, I'm not being busy with things that are unhappy and I'm not chasing my tail. And I thought, sometimes people have a misinterpretation of that. And like you said,
Yeah.
when you're doing a variety of things. So, how do we know the difference between resilience and self abandonment? I think so. It's interesting because I've actually less used the word resilience. I've noticed this last kind of probably year, I use the words less resilient because I do like the word capable. What our capabilities, our capacity more.
Mm.
And I think, but because I do think resilience honors our limits sometimes, but I think what self abandonment does, it kind of ignores them. So it doesn't even have that self boundary. It just goes charging through our boundaries and that's it. And I do think what's really important is in the morning, because often we're in our head and we ask ourselves this is what I've got to do today. And of course, women have always got two handfuls fulls at least. you know it's all very well saying I've got to get these three things definitely done, but we've always got a full list, and then a couple of things go full list again. But actually, I think resilience, it's hard sometimes. That resilience means it's hard but meaningful within
Mm.
ourselves.
Mhm.
um and self-abandonment says keep going no matter what. And I think that keep going no matter what eventually um gets us into trouble, real trouble. And I know
Yes.
sometimes it's that I know sometimes it's a survival thing, but I do
Hmm.
think and that resilience is not going to happen if I don't have my 20 minutes of coffee, if I don't go and just walk the dog, or like you're doing, breathing when you're out on a walk, or just taking your book, Anna, and just reading a page and pondering on it. Every time you do that, that's not just nourishing you. It's not just that, oh, feel good, wee tree huggy softness thing. I mean, I'm really nerdy about neuroscience. I like science backed things as well. And I think it's all of that, what Anna and I are talking about today, all of that is, it might only be a pound here and a pound there and a pound there. That's what it's like. So I read a page, oh, that's worth a pound coin. Oh, I go out and I walk and I ponder about something, that's a pound coin. I sit for 20
Yeah.
minutes, have my coffee, it's a pound coin. Doesn't sound much. But by the end of the week, you can easily have 20 or 25 quid, which again doesn't sound much, but that's 100, maybe £150 a month. Think about that in a
Yeah.
year. Think about your resilience there of a continual investment. And that's what it is. And if you need to think about that in order to give yourself permission to not feel bad and guilty, then so be it. But you
Mm.
cannot keep abandoning yourself.
Mm. I love that. And I actually love that idea of, kind of forgetting the word resilience and talking about capability, because it feels to
Mhm.
me like then that is more about the word capacity. Like, what is
Yes.
my capacity for doing this? Resilience always feels like there's got to be more. I've got to just keep pushing through and I've got
Mm.
to keep going and
Mm.
I've got to take on everything. And, the resilience always feels like this
Yeah.
pressure. But like capability is like, right, what it's like you said about taking some things out of the diary and or saying I'm just going to drop this for a little while and I'll come back to it.
Hmm.
It's around capacity, and that feels more like breathing.
Yes, it's funny
Feels.
because even when you were saying that about all the resilience, I could feel my body tense. Um, I think also, what as I've kind of pondered and wondered in myself more deeply about, do we often use resilience as a stick almost,
Yeah,
that we see it, all the time, and women. I mean, it's become so normal for women to expect an expectation of herself. It's not here. It's often here. I look right
yeah.
outside the screen, and we turn resilience into another good thing. It's about enduring everything. It's about, rather than asking for help or saying no or saying yes. Actually, I think saying yes. We've for years it's about saying no, but I actually think saying yes. What is it? Even asking ourselves the question. Actually, what if I looked at all my hobbies and interests? And I remember years ago, Anna. It was just before the pandemic. I asked myself around even my yoga practice.
Hmm.
And I just kept doing yoga. I kept turning up, and my body's like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But I kept doing it because I'm thinking, it's good for me. It's good for me. And I carried on for like, I think it was almost about 10 months or some 12 months. And I carried on. Then I turned round and I said, hello, body. Because it's not got its own brain, of course. We can coax it into anything. We can tell it any bullshit or any story we want. And I turned round to my body and I said, if you had a voice of your own body, what would you really want? Because I kept pushing through this resilience. I just thought was I being lazy? Was I just being, a bit meh about it? And my body says, could you try Pilates or something else? Could you do something else? That's what, and when I heard that voice coming back, I'm like, holy moly. And I thought, and in my analytical head, I thought Pilates were just for like, retired people in their late 60s or something. And my body loves Pilates now. It meets it. It so meets it. I got over my ego question. And I think it's a great time to ask yourself, especially around that capacity and resilience, rather than just answer it in your head, that actually turn round to your body and say, actually, what is your capacity today? What's your
Mm,
ability today? What would you like? If you had a voice, what would you ask of me right now?
mm.
Yeah. Don't eat that other chocolate bar. Yes, please drink more water. I'm dehydrated.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just looking at all of the rest of the questions that I've got and seeing which ones feel like the right
Oh,
thing to talk about.
yeah,
I think
just
one of the
keep going
things,
as long as you want,
we'll
Anna.
keep going, we'll keep going. I think one of the things that I've also found, and also people that I work with find, is the growth that we have is in pushing a little bit outside of our comfort zone, not out there too much, not necessarily all the time, but there's some interesting things that happen when we do that, when we push outside of our comfort zone. But I think other people think about following ease and doing things, I mean, from what you've been talking about today, it feels like it's more about the balance of the both, isn't there?
Hmm.
It's about the giving yourself the space to rest in between and to do the things that you want to do.
Hmm.
So I don't know, what's my question. I think there's just a lot of confusion around action versus pushing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And any thoughts on how do we do that? Well, we still want to grow, we still want to do things out of our comfort zone, but we don't want to be in that I'm enduring and I'm pushing and I'm doing something that I no longer want to
Hmm.
do.
Hmm. And we come back a full loop here. We come back to, what's my intention? What's my understanding of the word enduring or comfort zone, or um, the word pushing? Because I noticed the word pushing, what it did to me. Because some people can have a real judgmental or inner critic behind that word pushing. So we've got to watch that, because when you were saying it, I didn't hear that. But a lot of people, a lot of women, particularly when we're talking about good girls, will keep pushing and pushing and pushing themselves until they're absolute. I mean, women will carry on doing pushing themselves even when they're unwell. I find it fascinating, you
Yeah,
know. And I think the
it's true.
answer, like you said, is, it is somewhere in the middle. You use the word balance, but somewhere in the middle. So if you think about this pendulum in the middle, it's not black and it's not white, but what is it that's swinging that feel, because it's that pendulum is never, and I don't even think, I think every hour it changes, because, 11 o'clock I had a great energy. By about 1 o'clock, I thought, well, I don't want to feel absolutely shattered by 6 or 7 o'clock tonight. And that's when I rested. So you've got to watch
Mhm.
that pendulum of energy all the time. And I think just to check in with yourself. So I do think it's somewhere in the middle. I do think growth requires discomfort. Of course it does. But I don't think suffering is a requirement. And I think that's the difference, you know. And you know, having a approach myself of Buddhism, we talk a lot about suffering and when are we making ourselves suffer. I don't think we do it consciously. I'm not going to, but we do it in such subtle ways of like even holding on before I need the loo. Even, oh no, it's not quite lunchtime yet, so I'll wait an hour and a half, even although our body's going, actually, could you just have an apple just now or something? So it sneaks in
Yeah.
quite subtly. And I think you can challenge yourself without constantly overwhelming yourself. So we have to watch that. And I think a good question to ask ourselves, again, from my own Buddhist approach, is when am I, even unintentionally, making myself suffer? And it could be somebody else's needs, not even our own needs. Actually, am I saying, oh, I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll do that? Where I had a busy weekend, I turned round to my girls and say, this is what needs done in the house, this is what needs done. Mummy's got a busy week at work. Right, could you empty the dishwasher? Could you nip up to the allotment, take Luna a walk with you, go and water the plants, blah, blah, blah. What two or three things out of that, a bundle of 9, 10 things that need done today? And
Mm.
just start handing it over that baton a bit more, really, if the things
Mhm.
actually need to be done, you know
Yeah,
and
definitely.
and this excuse that people say, oh, it's quicker if I do it myself, that's rubbish. It might be in that very moment, but longer term it totally is not. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think in that case, sometimes we're not giving other people the opportunity to support us and to learn how to do it themselves. I mean,
Yes.
come on. Anyway, that's another
No,
thing.
you no, you're
But one,
you're absolutely right. I mean, my daughter was making us dinner yesterday, and she made it on was it Thursday as well, because I was coming back from the sauna, so she made it as well. She's boiling the potatoes, the salmon, the veg, and she knows how to do that. So that's building her confidence and her autonomy, and it's not just with children or young people. I think
yeah,
generally people do want to feel part of that sense of belonging, and we can give them that by doing that.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I like to talk about, again, I talked about in my book, but I think you've alluded to here is around a balance of those things that are kind of out of our comfort zone slightly, but that are growing, the things that we're doing. And I also like to talk about doing things, especially with your business, in seasons, because
Mhm.
we've had this very much industrial revolution idea of manufacturing, factory working, and it's just the same output all of the time. But actually, that doesn't suit us, especially if we wanted to move away from working in a corporate environment or or for someone else, and we're moving to our own way of working. I think remembering to work in seasons is important. Sometimes there may be a busy season, there may be a time when you are busier, but you plan in. There's a fallow season, there's a season for rest as well. So
Yes.
sometimes I think balance, we've always thought about work life balance as though it's a thing for one thing, but as though it happens in one day. But I think sometimes it can happen over a longer period of time, but we need to be mindful of it and plan it in.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know the next 3 weeks, that season for me is going to be very busy, because I'm coming up to holidays on the second, and you're absolutely right. And then when I come back, of course, it's going to be summertime, and I know fine well that I have less psychotherapy and coaching clients then. because, the sun comes out and people feel better. But like you said, I think it's really important to that planning, because I think that planning itself, Anna, gives us that future insight that helps us be pretty smart and objective about that. So, like being our own boss and our own coach, to look at it that actually I can do this, but then again, right, okay, and also in that, when can I plan? So, I've actually planned an extra sauna session for me this week because it's going to be busy. And I've actually planned a full body massage on Thursday night. Not, I had a chance at the weekend, but I don't want to wait until I'm exhausted. We don't want to wait until we're at that red traffic light. It's about coming back to that balance sooner rather than later. So actually, I've got a sauna early Thursday morning, full body massage on the Thursday night. So then I'm still working, being happy, got energy enough for the weekend. Even in those busy periods, we can't just put that self care just aside, if we need to keep that balance and not be exhausted.
Yes. I had a massage 3 days ago as well, and I book them in. I'm like, I look at my calendar and think, right,
Mm-hmm.
where do I need it? Where have I had a busy time and I need it after,
Absolutely.
just afterwards, or where is
Mhm.
something going to come into a busy time where I need it? I just whenever.
No, I think rather than you get to a part where you're, oh my God, I really, really need a massage. That is not good for us. And coming back and doing a loop, what we spoke about, that in itself is self-abandonment. We've already done the self-abandonment. I'm not saying that we should judge ourselves and give ourselves a hard time for that. That's the worst thing that we can do. However, we need to learn from those self-abandonment times, those times that we've even unconsciously, unintentionally made ourselves suffer unnecessary, because we are the ones in control. We can empower ourselves to do that. And if you've got a busy time coming up, the best thing you can do, smack bang in the middle of it or two-thirds in it, put in a full body massage or sauna or whatever it is that really is going to nourish you. Again, not like you're charging up your battery, your iPhone with your iPhone charger, like you're plugging it in with an iPad charger. And get even better if you've got somebody else to help you with that, that's really nourishing, so it feels aligned, and it helps you in that balance.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I need to ask you, we're looking at the time, I'm going to ask you a final question, which is what becomes possible when women stop striving to become more and start trusting that they already are enough?
Could you ask that question again?
I can. What becomes possible when women stop striving to become more and start trusting that they're already enough?
I think everything changes, Anna. Everything
Yeah.
changes. I think we stop building our life from fear. I think we start building our life from choice. And that in itself is being a rebel. You're going against not just the grain, but you're going against the grain of society and globally. So you've got that external and you've got that internal, and even those stories or that bullshit that's maybe been with you for far too long. You still grow, you still achieve, you dream big, and it's not dream that is a fantasy or imagination. That actually is already in your hands. It's what am I going to do with this bloody amazing, beautiful thing that I've got? And often, but I was saying this a couple of days ago, I have this real belief that often we talk about fear of failure, but I actually think that most women are really, really fear this success more than anything. Because if you imagine, how amazing you are to infinity and beyond, I mean, that would blow our minds. It would absolutely blow our minds. And the difference of you no longer trying to earn your worth along the way, but you're bringing your worth and your really sense of self and your really compassionate heart and really who you are and how you want to truly live your life, and to also, I think part of that is, yes, to serve others, and we need to live our lives too. It's
Hmm.
not one or the other.
Yeah. Oh. I absolutely love that. I thank you so much, Ange, for joining me on this and for sharing so openly your thoughts and ideas and experiences. How do people find you? How can people follow you? Where are you on Instagram, or what's your website?
Yeah, sure, sure. Um, thank you for that. Yeah, so LinkedIn, Facebook is just Ange Cameron. On Instagram, it's either Direction Scotland, all small case, all one word. That's where my retreats are, some of the events. All the Wild Warrior Women events that I run, all the money goes towards. I don't pay myself, it goes to people who can less afford for counselling and psychotherapy so they can access that. But you can now find me on my brand new Sauna Culture UK Instagram page, where I talk about, oh, bore the pants off you about saunas and the benefits, and everything else. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Brilliant. Well, I'll make sure I've got all the links and I'll put them in the show notes as well. So thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Good Girl Rebellion podcast. We'll see you again next week. And remember, it is time.